Welcome to the podcast, Restore Yourself, Restore Your Marriage, where it's all about discovering the thoughts that get you in the mood, the thoughts that get you out of the mood, and how creating a deeper connection with yourself creates a deeper connection with your spouse. I'm your coach, Shelly Anderson, coaching you through life, love, and intimacy.
This is episode number 161, A Wife's Personal Purposes for Sex. That's right. Let's get into it. What is the challenge that so many of us face when it comes to having sex? Well, one of the biggest reasons that I see come up when I work with clients is that they are doing it, they are having sex for their spouse, mainly. They're doing it for other reasons that are often very disconnected from their own personal reasons. So, for example, a lot of times a wife will have sex out of fear. And we never even think about this. I'm not talking about fear of their lives, like they're being threatened by their husband at knife point, nothing like that. But they are doing it because they have fears of what might happen if they don't. So maybe they might think, well, if I don't have sex with my husband, he might leave me. Or he might just start watching porn all the time if I don't do it. So what this ends up happening is creating an environment where we are having sex and it's fear-based sex. And the result of that is that the experience of actually being intimate and having sex is not going to be very fun. It's not going to be exciting or enjoyable. It's going to feel empty. And then we won't activate the pleasure part of our brain, and we won't want to return for more of that. So the other result of that is that when we are having sex from the basis of fear, it is much harder to move into the arousal system for a woman, because the biggest contributor to the arousal system working and getting fired up is having wonderful emotions, positive emotions, feelings that are energetic and creative and positive. So if we're trying to convince ourselves to have sex from a position of fear, then we're most likely just kind of going through the motions and enduring a so-so experience. Another reason is out of duty. We just feel it's our job. We feel like we should do it so that we can be a good wife. Or we might have sex out of pity. Like, oh, it's kind of been a while and he's probably feeling a little frustrated. And then if he's frustrated, he's going to be grumpy. And I just don't want to deal with the grumpiness. So we end up having sex for all these reasons that have nothing really to do with ourselves. And while it's noble of us maybe to have sex to really consider our spouse's needs, and that could be a very service-oriented thing, those reasons don't often bring us the pleasure and the joy and the fulfillment or the connection that women usually long for from the sexual and intimate experience. And so what do? We need to have our own reasons, our own purposes for ourselves to be intimate. We need our own personal purpose. So what is a purpose? How is the word purpose defined? It is the reason something is done or the reason something is created. Wow, have you ever thought about that? It's the reason something is created. Purpose can also be defined as the reason something exists. So, what do you think the reason for sex is? Why does sex exist? I mean, one is so obvious, right? To perpetuate the human race, right? To have children so that humans keep existing, right? That's the most obvious, but it's not the only reason. So if we take that reason out and put it aside for a moment, what is the reason for sex besides procreation? One of the biggest ones is to bring a husband and a wife closer together. And yet, for a lot of women, sex is the thing that does not bring them closer together. There's a lot of anger and resentment sometimes that drives a husband and a wife apart. And so we have to really take a look at that and say, man, if sex isn't fulfilling its purpose, I need to take a closer look at that. Purpose can also be defined as to have as one's intention or objective. It's also defined as something set up as an end to be obtained. And another definition is a subject under discussion or an action in process of execution. Now, I find some of these final definitions very fascinating and intriguing, right? Something set up, right? We can set up an environment and a situation and our mindset so that we can accomplish our own purposes for being intimate with our spouse. So if we really do want to feel a deeper emotional connection with our spouse, there's something we can do. There's a way to set it up so that we actually accomplish that purpose when we're having sex. And I also really like how it says it's a subject under discussion. Man, is this a very fascinating one. Because a lot of times when I work with a couple, they don't talk about sex very often. And when they do, it's very awkward. It's a challenging thing to discuss. They don't even know how to discuss it. They don't know if their discussion has been successful or even what to talk about, how to determine a goal, how to determine their own purposes. And so it's very interesting to learn this definition that it's a subject for discussion. So I hope that every woman listening to this and every husband can really think about this, right? Part of discovering our own purpose in sex is to start having some discussions about it, even if they are a little bit challenging. And to be able to come up with a plan of action about what that looks like and how sex can be played out and the whole journey and process of it so that it is more fulfilling and that it's not just fulfilling the husband's purpose of sex, but it's also fulfilling the wife's purpose for sex. Now, one final definition of the word purpose is to propose and as an aim to oneself. And at first, when I was writing these definitions down, I wrote the word propose as purpose. And I was like, wait a minute. To propose is not the same word. And so I was like, wait, what's propose mean? And because those words are so close, right? There's only one word that distinguishes these two words. And so to propose means to form or put forward a plan or intention. I love that this is an action word, right? To propose. Think about when you and your spouse were dating, right? There came a point where your husband proposed to you. This is an action. This was him saying, hey, let's get married. I want to lay out my plan for you. My idea, my intention is for us to get married. And so he proposed. And so to propose also means to set before the mind and to aim for. And finally, it's to set forth for acceptance, right? So when a husband proposes, he asks the question and then he waits for his girlfriend to respond. And so as we think about defining our own purpose, for being intimate and for having sex, we also need to think of being in the action of proposing to put forth a plan for our own sexual experience. So, what's been missing? What do you want to have happen that has not been happening in your sexual experience? Okay, so what do we do about all this, right? We need to come up with our own purpose, our own reason, okay, our own intention or objective. And then we need to set ourselves up for success. That means spend a little bit of time to come up with a plan. We can come up with a plan in like as little as a minute or two. This doesn't have to be anything super elaborate. And so if you're like, gosh, I don't even know what my own reasons are, what are some examples of what my own personal purposes for sex might be? So I just want to give you a few examples and offer these to you as options. I'm going to give you 4, but there are plenty of other ones out there. One purpose for having sex is vaginal health. Men know that when they have sex and have an orgasm, that is good for the health of their prostate. They know this. It's another reason that they're very eager to get involved in sex and pleasure and to have an orgasm. But women don't usually think about this, that we have our own ecosystem that's taking place in the vagina, in our whole system, our whole reproductive system. The clitoris is involved. And so we can also think of this as our own reason for having sex, for seeking out pleasure, for having the orgasm, is our own personal health, our own vaginal health. That's good enough reason, right? Tonight, I'm going to have sex because I want to keep my vaginal health intact, right? That's a good thing. It's a good thing to have health as a goal. Another reason could be to break your own record of how many orgasms you've had. I love this because your husband is going to be involved and he's probably going to enjoy the process, but you're not going to be doing it for his orgasms because men usually only have one, but women can have multiple. And I like to think about it as the more steps you put in, the more steps on the intimacy trek that have been included, the more orgasmic you can become. The less steps that are included, the less orgasmic you might be. And it may become more and more challenging to have an orgasm or to have multiple orgasms. And so even having the idea, the curiosity of like, man, the most I've ever had is 3. I wonder if I could have 4 the next time. Man, I'm going to figure that out. I wonder what would make a difference. What would take me from having 3 orgasms to having 4? Really consider that question. Ask yourself that. And then whatever you come up with as the answer, implement that. Implement that. Maybe it's like, oh, maybe I need more lubrication. Okay, make sure you have a bottle of lubrication next to you, right? The third reason and option would be to ask yourself and to figure out, how good am I? Am I good at sex? And find out. Have sex and like evaluate yourself. Like just ask, am I good enough? You don't need to have any formal checklist or anything, but am I good? Look at your husband's reaction. Did he think it was enjoyable? How did you feel about it? What was your level of pleasure? How do you define it as yourself as being good or having success? Another way to ask it, and I particularly like this way, is, am I a badass lover? Am I a badass at this? For me, I like to be a badass at things. And so being able to ask myself the same thing and have a goal as being a badass in the bed for myself because of the confidence it gives me as a person, as a human. I love it. I love this question. I love the confidence that comes to me, myself, when I ask myself this question and then I go and have sex to find out the answer. Okay. This is a whole different experience of how you enjoy sex when you have your own purposes. So a couple nights ago, I remember kind of like not being in the mood to have sex. But in my mind, I was like, but I want to have sex. I'm just not in the mood yet. And I remember kind of asking myself this, like, well, I know that if I ask myself a question, a powerful question, I can get in the mood pretty easily. And so I just asked myself, like, am I a good lover? I know I've asked myself that before and I've answered it before, but I'm curious about tonight. Am I a good lover tonight? Am I a badass lover tonight? And then all of a sudden, desire was easy. I was in the mood easily just by asking myself that question and wanting to find out the answer for myself. And then I did it and I was happy with my answer. I'm like, this is awesome. There are times that I've asked myself that question and I haven't been fully happy with the answers. And so then I went back to the drawing board and looked at maybe what I wanted to do differently next time. So it's great personal insight and a great opportunity to develop on a personal level. And then the final reason and purpose that you could have sex that could be super fun and playful and exciting is to celebrate something that you're not used to celebrating, right? It's not Valentine's Day. It's not your anniversary. It's not someone's birthday, but there are these things called national holidays. And there's pretty much one on every day of the year. And some of them are super funny. Like, why not celebrate some of these funny ones? Because it's going to bring something new to the experience that you could really enjoy. And it could take some of the pressure off of the sexual experience being so serious and so heavy. I'm going to give you a couple examples. One is Wear a Bow Day, National Wear a Bow Day, right? So what if you just decided to take this national holiday of wearing a bow and say, you know what, we're going to apply this to the bedroom. I'm going to wear a bow tonight. What kind of bow would you wear, right? Would you wear a bow with a big flower on it with little cat ears? Would you wear a bow that is like very festive, like a Mardi Gras bow with maybe a little hat on it? Would you wear bows on your wrists or your ankles or around your neck? Like, this can be so fun and playful. Hey, maybe your husband has a bow tie. You get that bow tie out and put it on his pillow. It's National Wear a Bow Day. Think about how funny that is, right? And we can add fun to the experience. Another example is National Photography Day, right? Think about different angles you could take pictures. And I'm not talking about porn. I'm talking about something beautiful, a beautiful connection that you can have with your husband. Think about maybe, okay, how do we hold hands during intimacy? Do we ever hold hands? Maybe that's going to be a goal and you're going to take a picture only of your hands during intimacy. What a fun, new, interesting thing to bring into the bedroom that has nothing to do with porn or kink, right? Awesome. But it's a new way to look at bonding and connecting. Another holiday is a kiss and makeup. These are all for August. Kiss and makeup day, right? Is there something that's kind of been bugging you that you could just get off your chest, or you could ask your husband and you could just kiss and make up and focus on the kissing, the make out, right? And maybe change up the kissing for one time and see where it leads. I love the scene in Spider-Man where Spider-Man comes down from his web and he kisses his woman upside down. Ooh, that's so sexy, right? When's the last time you did upside down kissing? So being able to add that as like a goal, as an element, is to see what upside down kissing could do for you and your arousal system can be magic. And finally, as a last example, this is a really funny one. It's National Grab Some Nuts Day. Oh my gosh, challenge yourself. How comfortable are you with grabbing your husband's junk? right? His nuts. I remember the day I made this like one of my own purposes. Like I'm not good at this. I don't do this ever. And so I made it a goal for myself to learn how to become better. I had my own intentions. And so I wanted to do it with more frequency, and I wanted to become more comfortable, and I wanted to do it in funny places so that it was fun and playful for me. I want to point out that none of these purposes were my husband's ideas, right? I'm not doing these things for him. I'm doing them for me. My husband benefits from them. Yes, he's going to think this is awesome and amazing. But when we have our own reasons, our own purposes, and that some of them will have to do with growth and progression and self-development, man, that's a game changer. And the reason is that once we have our own reasons for sex, our desire for sex becomes much more simple. And it won't feel like, oh, I just never have the desire for it. That's right. It's right, because we've only been having sex for somebody else's reasons and not our own. Think about when you wanted to go buy a pair of shoes. It's probably not because your husband said go buy those shoes. It's because you wanted those shoes, so it was easy to go buy them. When you have your own desires for things, it's easier to follow through with everything and all the actions that go with it. The same can be true for sex. When we have our own purposes for it, not our husband's, but our own, then our desire and going through it and the action plan and following through and actually having sex, like that can become so much easier when we decide on our own reasons for it. So then it won't feel as challenging. We won't feel like we're going against ourselves as a woman, as a wife, as a person. Because a lot of times my clients will say that, like, I feel like I'm going against myself. Like, I know it's a good thing to have sex, but I feel like I'm going against myself. It's because you don't have your own purposes. And then finally, the awesome result of having your own purposes is that you'll be able to activate the arousal system for yourself, the female arousal system. When you have your own desire, your own want, your own goal, your own purpose, then when you start the process of making out or touching each other's arms, right? Not even the genitals yet, the arousal system can be activated, and it's like the catalyst. Your body can start lubricating. So now when you move into sex, the sexual experience is heightened. It's better because the arousal system was put into play and activated. And so that means if sex is better, the pleasure part of your brain was activated. And it's like, yeah, that was awesome. That was pretty good. Like, remember to come back to that. Remember to think about grab some nuts day. Right? You can choose to do that anytime. Remember the wear a bow day and have it be fun and exciting. Now, as we finish up this episode, I just want to throw this out that my clients usually really struggle with having low desire or no desire or interest in sex. We call this apathy, right? For the month of August, the Make It Meaningful membership has done a deep dive into the concept of apathy towards sex. So we talk about all these things in a little more detail than in this quick podcast. So if you are resonating with this and it's ringing true, then make sure you get onto my website, shelly.andersoncoaching.com, and check out the Make It Meaningful membership, because we do take deep dives into these topics every single month. And then you also get a chance to be coached live and anonymously, which is huge for a lot of people when we're talking about sex and intimacy, and we don't want everyone to know our business. So make sure you check it out. And remember, the more you restore this type of intimacy with yourself, the more you restore it with your spouse. Thank you so much for listening today, and I hope you will join me again next week.